some of the stuff that I've seen some of these people do that are doing the job that I'm doing, I can't have any more respect for them because they're doing so much more with less. It's insane to see, and that needs to be talked about. And I don't see anybody talking about it, so we're gonna talk about it.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first installment of the Dark Horse Sports Podcast. My name is Scott Mitchell.
And I'm your other host, Jalen Leach.
And in today's episode, we feel like it's important to share about who we are, what we are passionate about, and what we are headed at, where we're going with this podcast. So to lead off, I'll start with Jalen, and Jalen introduces himself and why this is important to him.
Yeah, so basically, I'm Jalen Leach. I'm a mass communication student at North Carolina Central University. And basically, me and Scott, we talked for about a month or so about making a transition on the podcast to doing something like this. And basically what we want to do is we want to give some light to some of the mid-major programs around the country that are doing some really cool things. And they don't really get talked about unless it's tournament time in March Madness basketball, where they're called the Cinderella stories, if you will. Yeah, basically, I feel like those schools deserve the love just like the Power 5 schools, the SEC schools, the ACC schools, and whatever. They get all the coverage, but a lot of the smaller schools are essentially doing similar things, just on a smaller scale. And basically, this podcast is going to be, we call it your home for all things mid-major sports. And basically, that's what we're going to do. We're going to cover mid-major athletics.
And I'm Scott Mitchell. I'm a junior student here at Western Carolina University in Cullowhee, North Carolina. I am a communications major with concentrations in broadcasting and journalism. I have a minor in coaching. And so I am on board with Jalen. The reason we are targeting mid-majors is because Jalen and I, we go to mid-major schools. We get to see what it's like. Jalen and I grew up around big colleges, NC State, UNC Chapel Hill, Duke. They're all within 20-minute drives of us. So we got to see what athletics is on such a large scale. And when you get to a school like this, you kind of recognize that there are some similarities, but there are some pretty blatant differences too. And the difficulties that come with that. And I think that the niche that we're really aiming for is that we see a lot that, mid-majors really only get the love come March. They make the tournament, 2 or 3, kind of go deep into the tournament itself, and they're Cinderella teams, which is a cool and catchy name. But when you actually look at it, these teams are real contenders, and they have been. It's just that because they're not in a Power 5 conference, they're just assumed to not be as good.
Yep.
And I think we're here to shed the light that these teams are just as good, and they just don't have the publicity. They don't have the platform to share those kind of stories and, that kind of success. So that's why Jalen and I are here, and that's why we feel like Dark Horse is really going to be your home for mid-major sports.
Absolutely. I mean, you've kind of hit the nail on the head right there, man. I can't really add too much to that, but so yeah, I mean, that's pretty much an introduction about us and who we are. Basically some things that you're also going to see throughout the duration of this podcast. We're going to do some interviews. We previously interviewed the athletic director at Nicholls State and Western Carolina, and I'll link those below. But in the future, we will do more interviews, eventually talk to some coaches, potentially some players, and really try to shine some light on some of these schools that don't get the credit that they deserve all the time.
Yeah, and I think that the interviews that we've had, specifically with those two, we've really been able to dive deep into the differences especially because, at least for the Southern Conference, you know, the athletic conference that Western Carolina is in, football got moved to spring, and actually all of our sports got moved to spring. We're functioning. Every single one of our sports is going on right now. Football, baseball, basketball just finished. Women's soccer, tennis, all of them are all functioning right now. And supplementing that kind of money, you don't get a normal football season. We don't get to sell out stadiums. And that kind of aspect is really, you know, painful for smaller schools. I think in total we have 13, you know, athletic teams on my campus, right, as compared to a UNC that has like 22, 23, 24. Right. And on top of that, they've been allowing fans for a lot longer than we have. And so, like, that aspect of it is something that we really want to shed light on as well. So I just think in general that, you know, the interviews that we've had, we've been able to understand the issues that are facing mid-major conferences and the schools within those mid-major conferences. And we continue to like try and continue to build on these connections that we've made in order to give you the closest insight to the man itself.
Yep.
And so interviews with JT and Alex were a perfect segue into this.
Yeah, and to kind of further that point, basically what Scott is essentially trying to say is the mid-major schools are basically trying to do the same thing with less resources. They're trying to function at the same rate that the Carolinas, the Dukes, the NC State, the Wake Forests are operating at, with 25 to 50% of the resources that those schools have. So basically what I do is I'm an extension of the sports information directors at Central. I basically help them out any way that I can, whether it be broadcasting a game, PA announcing a game, doing live stats for a game. Like, I can do holding a camera. Like, I've done anything that you could think of for a game day operation. I've pretty much done it. And I've realized that, so basically we have 3 main SIDs for the 14 sports that we have at Central. So basically 5 sports to a person. Well, at Carolina, they have an SID for basketball. They have an SID for football. They have an SID for baseball. They have an SID for track and field. But at the mid-major schools, a lot of these people are working with 1 or 2 other people, maybe a third person at most. So,
you know, you have like, you know, your athletic director, and then underneath the athletic director, you have 7 assistant athletic directors that are in charge of maybe 2 sports. I don't have that here. I have an AD, and I think I have an assistant AD, and then I have the AD of media relations. And like, that's it for what I have for athletic directors. But that AD of media relations is every sport. His job is media, is like everything that has to do with the media for all of our sports. And like, out of Carolina, you have an AD for media relations for probably 2 or 3 sports at a time.
That's what I'm saying.
And even the bigger ones. So I mean, like, you got a UNC guy. He's like a UNC. Like, you have a UNC basketball guy because, you know, UNC basketball is a living and breathing heart to that community. Yep. So like, you need someone who is like entirely focused on something like that small little piece of the puzzle. You could have one guy specifically focused on that, as compared to somewhere like here where you have the one guy in charge of everything.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much it. That's all I think we pretty much introduced ourselves pretty well right there. Do you have anything else to add?
I don't think so. I'm excited. These Cinderella teams are about to be coming out. A lot of those teams have their tickets punched, and I am excited to see what these Cinderella teams are built for, and how they're going to do during this tournament and really turn some heads this year.
Yep. And if you want to check us out, our Twitter is going to be linked below. Our personal Twitters are going to be linked below. New episodes every Monday at noon. Be ready. You're going to see it. Dark Horse Sports. We're ready.